And we're live. Hey, you guys, how's it going? It's been a few weeks since I've been on here. All I can tell you is that's the post tax season. Basically, do nothing because it's really fun to do that. But anyway, we got a good show tonight because I've got Scott backstage, and we're gonna kind of tell war stories about how our tax seasons went. Like you kind of heard me ranting weekly about how mine went, but I think Scott's going to have some good stories as well. So now the first thing is first, and it's most important. What beer are we going to drink tonight? This one's called. It's either Bodum or Bottom, but it's by Half Acre Brewing Company, which is a local Chicago brewery here, and they are absolutely awesome because they produce one of my favorite beers, which is called Daisy Cutter. So this is an offshoot of that. It's an IPA. The percentage, I think it was, I saw it here just a second ago. Yeah, 6.7. So this one will get me nice and toasted pretty quickly, I think. So let me get this going here. By the way, if you guys wouldn't mind, let me know how my audio is. It's always harder to figure that out when Clary isn't here. And just so you know, Clary is busy doing his thing in Minnesota. He's doing like a family thing, so we'll leave him be this week. But I'll get him back on here. So let me get this going. God, it smells pretty good. I've talked about it before, but I have a thing for like the citrusy IPAs just because they smell good, they taste good, they're good. Mm. Oh yeah, this one is good. So audio is good. All right. Um, so anyway, one of the reasons why I didn't come on here for a while is that I was actually out west. I talked about it before, but me and Clary and a couple other people, we went to Reno to see Atham graduate. This was over 2 weeks ago now, so it's been a little bit. But that was a lot of fun. It was just so much fun. We went on a hike. We basically just celebrated Atham's accomplishments. So it was a ton of fun. We were there about 3 days, and then I went back to Vegas with Clary for another 3 days, just because I figured I was already out west. I might as well stay there a little bit longer. And we had just as much fun there because we went hiking at Zion. You know, we worked out. We just had fun. Going around to his favorite spots in town. So it's the second time I'd visit him there, but it was totally worth it. So cheers. Mm. Now I did want to throw you guys a little incentive here. If someone throws me a healthy super chat, I may have a funny Clary story or two from that trip. Nothing that's going to totally embarrass him, but it was pretty funny. so So we'll see what happens there. And by the way, since Clary is not on the show, that's when we want to see the highest super chats because we don't have to split them with him this time, and it really gets on his nerves. So that is what we need to do tonight. Um, this does not taste like a 6.7% beer. Like it's really smooth. I mean, really smooth. Get the rest of it in here. Um, So anyway, yeah, it's good to be back. I'm back in the city, and one of the good things about Chicago is that there's all kinds of like festivals, street fests. You know, it's summer is the time to be here, and I pretty much missed all of last summer because I was down south so much. But I'm pretty excited about finally getting to enjoy it here. So, oh, I see a lot of familiar faces there in the chat. I'll shout out you guys in a second here. Now before I bring Scott on, I wanted to tell you I started doing this whole like, sh I never came up with a name for it. It was like the decline of Chicago's story of the day or the week or whatever. I still need a good title for that. So if you guys have a good one for that, let me know because I'm still working on that. But Well, actually, I got a quick funny story, and then I'll get into what happened. So, I was talking about those street fests and everything. There was one here this past Saturday. It was called May Fest, MAI Fest, and it's basically a German beer festival. And this has always been one of my favorite ones because it's only about like a 15-minute walk from my apartment, so it's super convenient. Like it's just perfect, and it's always right around June. Yeah, about June 1st. And so me and a group of guys went on Saturday, and I mean, I'm not gonna say German beer is my favorite because it's all Pilsner and it all kind of tastes the same. So, it's not like I seek it out, but it's such a fun event. I mean, full of people and the weather was warm. So, the gals were in sundresses and it's just a fun time. The music was cool. And this is the first time I'd gone since COVID because I didn't have it in 2020 and 2021. And for last summer, I happened to be down south, so I missed it. So it was really cool to be back up here for it. And so this is what happened on Saturday. So I'm there. I'm totally sloshed. Like I'm just like rip roaring drunk. This is sort of the late afternoon. I'm at the table with my group of guy friends and everything. And what do I see? I see this girl like walking right past our table, and I thought I recognized her, and it turns out, like, I looked a little bit closer, it was a girl who I was, like, sorta, like, dating/hooking slash hooking up with or whatever immediately before, like, the COVID lockdowns happened, so this was well over 3 years ago, so we're talking, like, January, February 2020. The reason this was sort of funny was because, once tax season and COVID started, we kinda ghosted each other. Like, there was no, like, goodbye or anything, like, neither of us just reached out to the other, so it was definitely kind of like a loose end, and so when I saw her walk past me and she was with some dude, she was with this much older looking dude, I mean, he had, like, gray hair, he had this, like, frown on his face, he was like, so maybe he was German, and they were both, like, really tall, like, this girl's, like, 5'10", and the dude was, like, huge. So me and oh, and she's Hungarian or of Hungarian descent or whatever. So she walks past the table and I see her, with this dude, and I like tap on her arm just to get her to turn around and look. And so she looks and I kind of wave to her. I'm like, hey. And she's just like, hey. And I'm trying to tell her something, and she kind of leans down towards me, and as she's doing this, at the corner of my eye, I see the guy she's with who's just like, and he's like really annoyed that this is happening. So I say to her, I'm like, "Hey, you're not German, you're Hungarian," and because I was drunk and I hadn't seen her in so long. But yeah, so she kind of smiled and laughed, and I gave her a cheers. And then this guy in front of her is just like he looked like he was ready to like kill something, like somebody killed his puppy or something. So I didn't know what else to do, so I just give him a cheers. I'm like, "Cheers, bro!" And I go up and I clink his glass, and he, as I'm doing that, he just his frown just never left his face the whole time. He was just like, so I guess you could say that like that was the loose end that got closed, but it was pretty funny. And she's maybe like 3, 4 years younger than me, but this guy was easily like 10, maybe even 15 years older than me. So I don't think it was her brother or her father or anything. I think she was with that dude. So anyway, I brought that story up because it leads to the Chicago decline story of the whatever. Because when you go to one of these events, all they have is porta potties. So you're pretty much just lining up outside when you gotta go pee, and you have to pee a lot at these, festivals because, I mean, you're drinking so much beer because that's really all they had at this. It was basically a beer fest, BIER fest. So everybody's there. Men, women, we're all just standing there waiting in line, and, so I really had to go. So I waddle on over to where the porta potties are, and, there's a line, like, they're all they're taken, you just gotta wait, and I get to the one on the corner, and I see that it's got the green, meaning you can go in it, and nobody's going in there, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's kind of suspicious. I wonder what's going on. Like, why isn't anybody using this? And so I kind of go over there, I peer behind my shoulder, and I see this one guy laughing. He's like, I'm like, oh shit, what am I gonna find in here? And sure enough, there's this homeless guy there, passed out on the porta potty shitter, and he had like a little needle, a tiny little needle stuck in his arm. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So I come back out, and I'm exiting, and I'm just shaking my head and laughing, and the two other dudes are just like shaking and laughing too. So to me, that marks the sure decline of Chicago, because that is just awful. And I mean, it's not like the cops are going to go in there and like, pick him up and get him out of there, because they don't do that. I'm sure nobody at the festival wanted to go in there and mess with that, because we were all drunk and having fun. So yeah, that's short but quick. That is my story regarding the decline here. I don't know how much it probably can get lower than that, and it probably will in the coming weeks when I'm doing this. But that one was pretty awe-inspiring, because this guy could have been dead. He had like this glass eye on his, his eyes were just like, "Ugh," and I don't think he was drunk. I think he was high off of something, especially with that thing sticking in his arm there. Mm. So anyway, before I bring Scott on, just one more thing I want to mention. You guys might remember that my sort of guinea pig is Parker, because about a year ago I advised Parker to go ahead and get his EA, his enrolled agent certification, and he worked for H&R Block for the entirety of busy season, just a few months ago, and he was there the whole time. And I was talking with him last week, and he had a lot of updates for me, and they're really, really interesting. So this will probably be next week, because I do want to get back to doing this on the regular. But he's going to come on my show and give us an update with this. So I think that's going to be really helpful, because he's going to tell you all what to expect if you do want to go the EA route and then work for H&R. There's some good and some bad. But overall, he had a pretty good experience. So that's next week, most likely. So I'll keep you all posted. I see a few quick super chats. We'll get those taken care of. And then I'm going to bring Scott on and let the fun begin, because he got some good beer. Good beer over there. So my truth for $2. Damn, Chad already getting to cash, aka well, I don't know about that, but thanks for the super chat, man. I'm like I said, we don't have to share these with Clary, so we should keep them coming, and you might get some fun stories out of it. So yeah, Xenophone 2006. It's great to have you back on the regular chat. Well, thank you. I've kind of missed doing this, but I mean, I was traveling, and then frankly, I just didn't give a fuck, because I was sitting around doing nothing. But it is nice to be back. What else we got here? What's up? Seen you on here a bit. Nick is Steve. How you doing? Tornado Kid, Chris. Yes, I'm back in the People's Republic of Chicago. He was with us out west and for the Reno portion, and we had some fun. It was a lot of fun. Homeschool time. What is up? Enjoy the Chicago decline. That's what I've been doing. Nonstop Dre for $2. How are the protests over immigrants in Chicago? Yeah, so the people on the South Side are not too happy that the mayor or governor, whatever, is bringing in immigrants and that they're settling out in their area. I think it's kind of neat, because it's going to cause like this whole ruckus, and they're going to probably go to war with each other. And I'm just kind of like, whatever, you guys voted this in, so. Let's see, Dre. Chad got alpha man of the group by the guy. I don't know. He seemed pretty pissed that I was all, talking to her, and then he was with her now. So, and then you said something else I probably shouldn't read. The Tempest for $5 Australian. Forget the tax advice. We now come for Chad's Chicago stories. I'll have plenty, because I am going out and socializing more, which I haven't had a chance to do here in a while, because I've been traveling. But yeah, I'll have some stories for you. And yes, Dre, people here do poop in the streets. You're not wrong about that. So yes. Let me see, is there anything else? All right. Well, the man is waiting backstage and we're going to bring him on. So, Scott,
Hey, how are you?
doing well now that it's beer o'clock.
Yeah,
Tell
here
us
we
what
go.
beer? Yeah, you were showing me this. What beer? This one looked really cool.
Yeah, so this one's from Williams, Arizona. It's the Grand Canyon Brewing Company. If anyone's ever been out here and kind of traveled around to the different brewing companies, it's the Sunset Amber Ale. So bring up the can.
That's
Um,
pretty.
yeah, it's kind of, but
What
yeah, nice graphics. Let's see if it's
what's
good.
what's the ABV on it? Did it show that in there or
Yeah. So we have a 5.5.
5.5? Okay, that's healthy. I mean, to me,
Yeah,
anything over 5 is beer. So
yeah, pretty smooth, man. There's a Papago orange beer out here. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It's like
no, huh?
a wheat, pretty smooth, and it doesn't really mess up your stomach. I don't
Nice.
know. Sometimes the IPAs kind of mess with me a little bit. So
No, me too. And so far, I'm really liking this one. It's a little bit heavy in ABV, but the taste is fantastic. So,
yeah, yeah, I like
um,
the grape. Sometimes they taste like grapefruit. I don't know if you're a fan of grapefruit
I am,
flavored.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Real quick, Scott, I just got to do something here because Parker's in the chat. Just saying hi. Got a busy night preparing for tomorrow. More to follow. Yes, Parker, we're gonna get you on here on the next show, and you're gonna be helping out a lot of people. So yeah. All right, Scott.
awesome.
Now this is our time. How was your busy season, man?
It started out very strong. I think we were talking stats the other last week. Ended up with like 43 between partnership, S corp, C corp, or the corporate side 1120. Um,
Scott, real quick, did
it,
you do any partnership returns, or was it just like the S corp C corp deal?
it was I had about 13 partnerships.
Oh, okay, cool.
They're
Yeah,
very annoying. I don't know.
I
I don't know.
hate them. I try to avoid
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Because nobody ever pays taxes on distributions, and then they end up owing like 35 grand on the other side of it if
Yeah,
they're making
because
decent money.
they usually because yeah, a lot of times this is subject to self-employment tax if it's not getting fed into an S corp or something like that. So yeah, partnership
Right.
returns are they're a bitch. So so you did about you said
Yeah.
was it 45?
Super annoying. I roughly 45. I've got some on extension right now.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll push closer to 50 once they're all done by the time the extension deadline comes through.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you told me this the other night, but like what was your total up until let's just say April 18th? Like what was your total that you did up to that date? Because you've probably done
Up to
some
that
since then.
date, yeah. So I was like 198 between individual and business. And then I'm at like 204 right now because I figured it was going to get slow. Next thing you know, once we crossed that individual deadline, it was, hey, so and so filed as a Schedule C. They think there should be an S corp. And so I went back and revised some 2553s to the prior year. We'll get hit with the penalties, abate them, and then move them forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I made $2,000 last 2 weeks ago on about two of those, and then I have another one that's waiting. And then it's going to turn into a pipeline. It seemed like they're pretty well networked folks that they'll keep pushing businesses my way and all of that. So it's just one of those.
Niching is where it's at. Just so you guys know, the 2553, that's the form that you fill out to declare an entity you have to be an S corporation. So it's an important form because you want to get that timely in if you can.
So what's funny about that is I've only forced the S corp where you say screw it, I'll submit it with the return. So this time, because of their situation, I didn't realize you could backdate it. So even though they had a filing from 2021, I went back, revised the 2553. It took about 3 weeks to get the letter back saying, hey, we've reapplied the backdate to 2021. So we amended 21 and then got 22 in there and ran a little bit of payroll, paid the taxes on a amended 941, and then got them that reasonable salary requirement to make sure the second year wasn't going to be audited for that reason.
Did you have to give them or come up with a good reason for the late declaration? Because I never know what to say on those.
So I usually put the revenue procedure 213.30, late filing, prior tax practitioner did not submit the 2553 when requested. We are now correcting it and amending the future returns, or the prior returns and fixing the future returns.
Hold on, Scott. I'm typing this down because I got to do one of these tomorrow. Actually,
I
prior tax
I
practitioner did not timely submit.
did not submit and filed the Schedule C when it should have been a 1120S. And so you put it back on the previous practitioner. There's no recourse to them. It's just a matter of saying, hey, there was an error. We timely filed. Now we're correcting the administrative side of the S corporation.
Can you give me that reg section again if you have it handy? It was
late filing in pursuant of revenue procedure 213.30.
213.30. Believe it or not, thanks, dude. This is actually the first time I've ever had to do one of these, and I'm encouraged to hear it works.
Yeah, dude. My second business that I brought on, she was non-filed as an S corp. Like they converted them to an 1120 because the paperwork wasn't submitted correctly, and so that was my first integrate. That was my first. She thought she was an S, and so she's like, "Oh, the practitioner in California says it won't push through." So what you do around that is you put initial year return, attach the 2553, and you force it.
I'm just getting some of this down. Like you're teaching me something here because I'm usually the one who filed these, but I got this new client who the previous CPA really fucked her over. So I'm trying to fix it. That's my project tomorrow is to do this. So this is pretty helpful.
So if you submit it as like a second year filing, it's going to say it's going to be a reject code. Your entity doesn't match what's at the IRS. So put initial year in the checkbox on your tax, and then it'll probably default saying, hey, you can't submit this without the 2553. That's when I usually add the form, and then I upload the appended PDF that's signed. And then you'll submit it as an initial year. You'll get a late filing notice, and you just debate it.
Oh, man, that's gold.
Yeah.
So you guys, in plain English here, you're supposed to declare S corp status. It's usually like 75 days between when you form the entity if you want it to apply to that year, but you have a chance to do a late election if that time has been elapsed. And so that's all Scott was talking about. There's a little kind of backdoor way of doing it. So, so that's helpful.
So I usually force them, but this time because of their income level and who it was, I was like, they have some resources, good lawyers on staff. I want to make sure I do this correctly. So I actually just resubmitted it and backdated it, had the IRS send them the letter, and it said, you've been backdated to prior year. And then that allowed me to move forward versus trying to stir the pot and hope I got it right. So
perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
So we both, it's kind of cool. We both did roughly 200 or so by the time April 18th arrived. You know, I was more heavily weighted in businesses because like I try to avoid 1040s because, you know, I think that's when you get more needy clients, frankly. You know, why is my refund so low? So I try to only do 1040s for those who I'm doing, you know, business returns for, whether it's an S corp or even a partnership. Do you want to tell? I remember what you're niched in. I didn't know if you were comfortable sharing it. Do you want to? Should we keep that under wraps?
No, it's fine.
Medical,
medical stuff, and then also like restaurant bars.
Sweet.
Yeah. So that's the majority of what I have. I have a preschool, a concrete company, just some random one-offs like that. But the medical side is very interesting. That behavioral health, I mean, we spoke back in November, I think it was.
Mine are therapists. I mean, I got a couple of cam girls with S corps, but yeah, it's mainly therapists.
Yeah, so these are two, what do they call it? The behavioral health nurse practitioners.
Yeah,
they broke off from a major healthcare system here, and they're kicking butt, man. They're killing it. So it's definitely needed for one, society, and two, it's just another avenue for anyone who's in that healthcare profession just to break away. I think if anyone in any field can be their own boss, like please go do it.
So your niche is pretty similar to mine. I mean, I got therapists; those are medical people as well, and most of them are leaving group practices and starting their own. So you niched really well, I think.
It was so. What's funny about that is I met them. So I've got like 4 bullet points here I'm going off of. So talking about like merger and acquisitions. So I'm close to 4 years, 5 years into this now. There's a company that does 7 and 8 figure, I guess, e-commerce is how they niche their business, and they do nothing but bookkeeping. And what happens is they charge you $2,500.
Ooh.
Then a month, right? And if you're making 10 million a year, that's probably not that much. And it's all e-commerce, and it's probably a little overhead. You're just almost drop shipping from China. So what happens is they're making $2,500 and they're charging someone over in Europe or in the Philippines $9 an hour for the work. And so they have this huge profit margin. And I was like, this sounds really good, where they can just feed me tax business all day long. But with the foreign entities handling their books and records, engagement creep, where you're having to go back. So I test ran one with him, and I was like, I'm having to fix the stuff they're doing. I don't have a bookkeeping retainer. Like, there's a lot of crossover where my E&O probably wouldn't cover if there was an issue.
So you guys, E&O is your insurance carrier, and so when you start your own practice, you got to make sure that you're covered at all times, because taxes it's obviously not a joke. Here's a question for you, Scott, because I ranted about this a few months ago. Did any of your clients ask for comfort letters from their damn mortgage brokers? Like, have you ever gotten that request?
I have a auto repair shop.
Yeah.
Where he had asked me, he's a super nice guy, so I didn't really tell the mortgage broker what was going on. But I said, listen, if you're going to take your Schedule C, your net income was $6,000, but you had $65,000 in 179. That's phantom loss.
Yeah. So basically, you have to make sure that you're not overdoing it to keep things simple for you guys. Like, you got to make sure that you're not taking too much off the top when you're doing something like that. So,
but he didn't want to pay a $35,000 tax bill. So he's like, we'll take it in the 1 year. Yeah, it was going to be about $35,000 if we actually amortized some of that over the period, and then with the late filing penalties, not making quarterlies.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So section 179 is basically, it's this rule where up until at least 2022, say you buy a computer and it's $1,000, on a bookkeeping standpoint, you have to depreciate it over the life, which is, we'll say, 5 years. So,
5 years, yeah.
200 a year. 179 up until 2022 let you write off the entire asset in 1 year. But Scott, what has changed for 2023?
You tell me.
Now you can only do 80%.
Yeah.
And in 2024, you'll be able to only do 60%, I believe. Like, it's starting to sunset. This was part of the Trump tax changes, I believe.
Yeah. It's going to phase out through 2026.
Which is such a bummer. Like, I really hope that they're going to find a way to keep this thing going, because I think if you buy an asset, you should be able to write the whole thing off the year you bought it. But we'll see. So
with that, he couldn't qualify for a house. And I was like, just save your cash, get 50% down, and then they won't worry about it. It's a pretty cash heavy business anyway.
Yeah, the auto is pretty cash heavy.
Yeah. He invested in extra hoists so he can work on 4 or 5 trucks on the outside of the shop. So those hoists were $15,000 each. He's making payments on them. Mm-hmm. But we took it all in the first year. So, but I told him one thing. I told him, I was like, the housing. So we have a 41-year-old townhouse here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We put some money into it. They're still selling for $300,000.
Really?
325. The house he was looking at was 600. I'm like, why do you want to buy at these levels? I'd almost rather Tucson, Arizona.
Okay, I remember you were in Arizona. I couldn't remember the exact
Yeah, it's silly, man. Like the valuations on all this stuff, and people are in bidding wars at 450 still, even with a 6.1% interest rate on a mortgage, and so if you're priced lower, than what the average house is. Like these townhouses are, 300. The goal here was to Airbnb it and then move, but the rates jumped on us.
Yep.
So we're just kind of holding the flight pattern on that. We'll see what happens. But if
would
you're
you want to
priced
stay
at that,
local? Like if you move, would you stay local? Or?
yeah, probably. And it's slowly turning into California and a little bit more socialist. We have a flat tax now where it's 2.5%.
It's because they're all moving there and bringing their voting patterns with them, apparently.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Big migration. So you're going to end up with Cappy on 22 acres being angry as hell here in about 10 years.
You guys, Cappy got so angry at something when we were there out west. I mean, and maybe I'll tell you all the story. I got to get a little drunker and maybe see a super chat or two about it. But Scott, here's a question. We had talked about this before, but I think it's a pretty good question. This is from Kamran Karimi. How many years of experience did you guys have before you started your own practices? Scott, you told us your story before, but how much? Yeah.
So I came out of the military, finished the undergrad. So I came from a corporate accounting background. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a lot of just self-taught. Went into it. When you're meeting with these companies, you're getting their P&Ls out of QuickBooks or whatever software, and then you're basically going through your CPE, and those CPEs are pretty informative. Those CPEs let you know what the tax changes are. I need to jump on that. I'm halfway through the year. But
Same.
a lot of it's on the fly.
Would you agree with this? This is the way I see it. And this is so to answer your question, the thing is I worked for the IRS a bunch and then I kind of studied it on my own. But you can sort of self-teach these things. It's like it's repetition. The more you do it and understand it, you don't have to take a course for this. It's just understanding it and repetition.
A lot of my education it was December. My first big learning experience was the boob job debacle, where this lady got a boob job. She pulled money from her 401k, and she forgot to report the 1099. She got a letter 2 years after the fact because IRS was behind, stating she owed $3,700. She pulled the money. My first question to her was it for like a cancer treatment? Did you? And she's like, no, I had 6 kids.
Bigger boobs.
Big boobs and maybe a lift or whatever, just aesthetics. It wasn't health reasons. Otherwise, we could have waived some of the taxes on it. So I'm still dealing with this, man, because I appealed the abatement for the penalty. I was trying to get we paid it, and then appealed the penalties for it as like, hey, if you go through reasonable cause and all the different reasons, education, mental impairment.
Mental impairment should count.
I actually wrote the letter saying that she's of average, right around 90, maybe an 85 IQ, and didn't have the knowledgeability. Like I wrote a letter and it went to the appeals. It's still sitting at appeals.
Really?
Yeah. And so I guess they're still behind 2.5 or 3 years on some of these cases. They're probably dealing with more important cases similar to what you dealt with at the IRS.
Oh yeah.
Tax courts and all that. We're just asking for like an abatement of $1,800.
Oh, that's nothing. I mean, there was a tax court case several years ago where somebody, basically not my cam girl, but somebody who was basically either a stripper or, OnlyFans or whatever. She tried to write off her boobs or depreciate them or whatever as, an ordinary and necessary business expense. And they actually won that one. And I've actually, in subsequent years, I've written off, breast augmentations. In fact, one thing I thought of doing, but I don't know, we'll see if I get buzzed enough. Like literally, I just did one of my cam girls' tax returns, and I was going to read off some of the expenses. But I might. We'll see about that one.
When you write those off, do you add a statement referring to? I forget the term they use in the appeals courts and the court cases. Court cases you can reference and court cases you can't reference.
I didn't. I was going to wait. If there was ever any, if they came back to us about that one, then I was going to research it and all that. But I just thought, she wasn't actually making enough money where it mattered. But that's kind of funny how yours involved a cashing out of a retirement account, and we had to find an exception for it.
Yeah. But I'm still fighting it. So I don't know. I doubt she gets over on this one. She sent me a text. She's like, "Hey, any word yet?" I'm like, "Not really."
It's gonna take a while,
Take
probably. Yeah,
yeah.
it's not a high priority. Um, Scott, how about this? We were again talking about this over email the other day, and I think it's a fun topic. So it's been what, like 45, maybe 50 days at most since we got through the deadline.
Yeah.
What have you been doing just to relax, chill out? I mean, I'm not doing a ton of work these days.
So this will go into my bullet point one. All right. So May 10th, Silicon Valley Bank went.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. So guess what? When I started, I had this idea. Hey, I'll get bookkeeping and payroll retainers. It'll be wonderful, and it'll naturally segue to business tax returns.
Yeah.
And it did. I went with Patriot Accounting because one, I could affiliate with them, get a lower fee for the businesses, and help them out, pass the savings on to them, build some trust, all of that. 25 years ago, Silicon Valley Bank gave Patriot Accounting their first loan to build the software, and I think it was longer than 25 years ago, but I'm just going back. Yeah, so they gave them the startup money. So in being a loyal customer of Silicon Valley Bank, they stuck with them. And so every time they take your tax deposit and your net pay from their account, they sweep it into Silicon Valley Bank, and then they sweep it to the payroll, the company that's running that payroll, their employees. Yeah. Right. So it's kind of like a step one, they sweep it to Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley Bank then releases it. I think First Citizen does Paychex and ADP. They use some of these weird one-off banks for this stuff. They don't use Chase. They don't use Wells Fargo. They don't use B of A. They use these one-offs.
Smaller ones, yeah.
So we're, 5 days away from the deadline on the S Corp and partnership?
Yeah.
Guess what I get? Where's our fucking payroll? I get these emails, boom, boom, boom. I had no idea. I don't watch the news, man. I stay out of that stuff. I'm not political.
You weren't in charge of this. You were depending on, the bank to do
Silicon Valley Bank. So I'm 5 days out. I'm cramming to get these returns completed. And I'm pulling my hair out. And so I'm like, there's nothing really I can do. What you need to do is go back in your payroll register, start cutting checks, and I'll void the payrolls. And so I canceled software. I avoided payrolls. And I said, everyone take a chill pill, cut the net pay out of your account. You'll get a deposit back. And so they started kicking out the deposits back, the payroll tax and net pay back to the companies the following week. They had a backstop. Luckily, they had a backstop, a secondary bank to start kicking the stuff out. So the following Wednesday, they said, "Hey, we can direct deposit, or you can void it and cut checks."
You got to cut the checks.
Cut the checks.
Yeah. One thing about payroll is, strange as it may sound, people don't like it when they don't get paid, and when they're expecting to get paid. That's usually the. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I had all these big ideas when I started, and it was working out. And then there's these one-off things that happened this year, just like this. Everything from referrals that were dog shit to, referrals coming from family members.
I quit. I had to quit doing referrals from family and friends because it never led to anything good, and you feel obligated to take it on because somebody close to you sent them. So my default is no with that. No.
Yeah. So I'm dealing with that. And then you don't think about this stuff. A bank goes belly up and then your clients can't get paid. I was like, I'm going to have to exercise my E&O. This isn't my fault, but I'm just waiting for one of these people to say, hey, here's my lawyer. Right. So for those who are on the podcast, Nick is Steve, anyone who Parker, anyone who there's secondary and tertiary events that could happen, not saying they will happen, this was a one-off event, but that you don't think about. So similar to what you did, ADP is probably the better partner. Put it back on the company and then just get it completely out of your business. Yeah,
I'm not Mr. Let's go for the biggest banks or whatever, or the biggest companies, but frankly, ADP has treated me really, really well over the years, and they've got a referral program, so they will kick it back to you if you sign people up. Plus, I've signed so many people up with them over the last, decade that my clients actually get the lowest possible rate because they know that if they don't, I'll send them somewhere else.
Right.
So, Yeah.
Yeah. So that was this. So talking about relaxing, man, it took me until about last week, dude, to really come out of my funk. It was one of those tax seasons where it beat me up. It was my best tax season, but I felt like Rocky coming out of the first Rocky, man, just getting smashed. Like
You sound
anything that
like
could go
me.
wrong. Yeah,
You sound like me about 5 years ago when I had my first, like, it was amazingly successful, but oh, did it kick the shit out of me. And
it
that,
was
but
bad.
it's good, Scott, because it's a little bit like pledging a fraternity. Like you go through it, and you get through it, but you're none the wiser. Now you know what to do going forward. Don't take those types of referrals too seriously. Like you're going to be able to
Yeah.
like put out fires before they start. So
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be 2 partnership returns. The lady wasn't timely. I was just like, you need to go find a new practitioner.
you know what? I'm going to give Clary credit for something. And I've said this a lot. Like Clary always says, Chad, you're too nice. You're too nice. And for years, he was right. Like, I just don't have any patience anymore because I don't need anybody else. I don't need any more business. If somebody's causing a problem for me, or they're being unreasonable, or they're bitching about fees, or anybody who like brings up a stink that I feel is unwarranted, I mean, that's it. You're gone. So, and I'm
Yeah.
not a dick about it. I'm just like, well, I'm just one guy. You need a team. I'll send him to
Yeah.
the nearest H&R, or, I've got some other companies here that I work with that have a staff.
Here was the excuse I got. I don't have time. I was like, you're running a business and you don't have time. What the hell are you talking about?
That's never an excuse.
No.
Anybody who's running a business and they're not getting you something with a deadline because they don't have time. They're either extended at best or they're fired at worst. And usually I fire them.
Yeah, I lost. The family's okay. It was a good business, a good client for the last 4 years, but I had to get rid of them. I was asking for a balance sheet right up to the deadline. I was like, tough luck, I'm done.
Listen, man, this is what I think everybody needs to hear. For far too long, I was far too accommodating. And when you're just getting established, like at this point, Scott is established, but it takes you some time to get there. So I don't like the word abuse, but don't take shit from people. You don't need them. Remember, there's far fewer of us than there is them, and there's still a shortage. So, yeah.
I some of the referrals I've had over the last month after the deadline have been, I got ghosted by my CPA. There's people that I think what happened, because there were older folks, I looked the names up, and
they retired or died, frankly.
They retired, man, and they ghosted their entire client base.
I got similar emails too, and I didn't have room for them, so I sent them to a couple of my referral CPAs, which if you're doing this, you should always get something back for it. Don't forget. But yeah, a lot of people got ghosted because boomers were just kind of like cashing out, selling their part of a partnership, or just frankly selling their entire business. And some literally died. Like I got a couple that were like, I found out my CPA died. What do I do? And I had to send them to other CPAs. I'm like, I don't think this one will die, but that's the best I can give you.
Those are tough because you then have, if you don't have a copy of the return. So some of those older CPAs were paper heavy. And so they have like, oh, here's your paper return. I use ShareFile. It's uploaded. There it is. You'll have it for the next 960 days after that.
I use SmartVault.
Yeah,
I actually had to fire somebody a few months ago because they were so upset. So I didn't sell. I ended my lease for my office almost a year ago now. So this was the first tax season I went through where I was fully virtual. I mean, you couldn't meet me in person unless you want to come to my apartment. And somebody did not like that. They were like, well, we prefer to do face-to-face. So I had to fire him on the spot because, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. My lease ends next month. And then from there, nope.
Don't, man. I'm telling you, this is a new world, a brand new world, or whatever it's called, a brave new world. It's all virtual, all of it.
Can I ask you a question on that?
You can ask me anything.
All right, my insurance is renewing. So if you're virtual like this and you meet someone at a Starbucks, or they're like, "Hey, let's go have a beer and talk."
Sure.
Because I get that a lot. Let's go. Like we did dinner
beer and talk.
Yeah. So like I did dinner with the 2 owners of the behavioral health company.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're actually meeting with them, does your general liability need to cover those virtual meeting spots around the city of Tucson? Like, how does that work?
That's a great question. You guys, general liability is if somebody, when you had an office, it was like if somebody slipped on the carpet and broke their leg. I can't think of a better example, but it's basically outside of the service. Like if something happens out, they just hurt themselves by being in your presence somehow. That's Scott, I never even considered that because I'm so like I maybe saw like 3 or 4 people in person because I'm not willing to meet people in person. If it's outside of tax prep, like if you're just getting a drink talking about stuff, I don't think it matters because you could just say there was no engagement letter signed, like we were just having a beer. If it was official business, that's definitely something to look into. But I mean, keep in mind the odds of you having to handle somebody getting like alcohol poisoning or something like that, are not high. So I don't know if I'd worry about that too much if I was you.
Yeah.
Scott, I need to call timeout real quick because so MEZZ asked in the chat, they were asking about international tax prep, and then Nick and Steve said Nick that was on here before was the one to ask because Niche is international. I need to call time because I didn't mention this earlier. Nick Schumacher was his name. I did a stream with him a few months ago. It was after I did the one with you, so I want to say December.
Okay. Yeah.
He was in town last weekend, and he was at the German Beer Fest that I told you about where I was hammered. I mean, I got absolutely sloshed with this dude. I got to meet Nick in person. And you guys, he's a cool guy, and he's got a good thing going on with this international tax practice that he's doing. So, Scott, when it comes to international, I want nothing to do with it. So I refer it out because it's just too complex.
So E&Y, the Big Four, the regional Big 10 in your state, like we have B. Fleischmann, if I pronounce that right, probably murdered that one. Clifton Larson Allen. It's another big one here. Those are considered regional, not the big four, I believe. So typically with the FBAR, the 8938s, the PFIX, the foreign partnerships, those are $20,000 returns.
Yes.
So, and you're almost guaranteed to get an audit with some of that, depending on what the nuances are in the engagement, where the person lives, what if they're U.S. with foreign assets, are they reporting correctly? Like you almost need a staff for that stuff.
Yes.
And usually what I've seen with those, it's usually like a U.S. person who's over 10% partner into like a mining company in Australia, some goofy, weird ownership methodology. And then it triggers all these events. It's such a complex, like I want mom and pop bar. I don't want the
stuff. And that's why I brought it up. It was because like Nick is, he does have a staff. If you're doing international stuff, it needs to be more than just one person. So the second someone comes to me with something, I don't want to use, something similar, I was going to say foreign, international, I either send it to Nick or I send it to a much bigger firm here in town, like a tax attorney sometimes, because that shit gets super complicated with the FBAR and, the FinCEN and all that shit.
And there's no way. So I get a lot of questions like, hey, if I have, Bitcoin or I have property overseas, at some point, if you're going to stay in the U.S., like you have to report it. You have to repatriate.
Yeah.
There's no way around hiding this stuff anymore.
No, there used to be.
And if you know a way, it's above me and I want nothing to do with it.
And the reason is because all these banks and, in the Cayman Islands or Switzerland or whatever, they know what's going on here. They're going to be subject to scrutiny. So a lot of times they won't even take you on without these extreme reporting requirements. It's been about 10 years, I think, since the FBAR and FinCEN and all that came along. So yeah, they just don't want people hiding their money anymore.
I think the most complicated thing I'll end up doing is, and we're looking at, I have a couple tax returns next year that are possibly talking about the real estate professional status.
Yeah, that's a great topic. I'll talk about it in a nutshell. Um, when you have real estate holdings, a lot of times it's considered passive, and there's a lot more limitations to like passive losses. And you can depreciate buildings, so that can be something where you can claim a loss, but again, it's subject to income limitations. But if you are able to qualify as a real estate professional, and I don't remember what the requirements are, you
750 hours. It's got to be a primary
income
business.
generating, yeah.
If you have a W-2 and you need to qualify, you have to meet, what is it, 50% of your W-2 hours.
It's something like that.
Yeah,
And it's good you're going to deal with that, because that is a complex issue. But basically, if it's passive, you're severely limited with losses. If it's an active business, meaning it's going on like a Schedule C or a partnership return, you can absorb a lot more in terms of losses, and it's legal. So Scott,
mhm.
full disclosure, whenever somebody's in that situation, I get rid of them, because I don't actually like. Yeah, I'm kind of a dick these days, because I've got my niche, and it's like there's just
Yeah,
headaches I want. Anybody who's coming to me with multiple rental properties, even like one rental property, is kind of a pain in the ass to deal with, because they're not very good at keeping track of their expenses. So
right.
anybody who's real estate investment heavy, I kick him to the curb, or I send him somewhere else.
I feel the same way because it's a convoluted real estate professional status is very convoluted. So what I would say is if it's a truly paid for property and you can deed it into the C corp, the S corp, the partnership, or the
Yeah,
LLC, at that point we're going to cost segregation. We're going to hire
right.
a company to come in and cost seg, and then we'll bonus depreciation in the 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, whatever, however
Yep.
they move the 39-year property into these buckets that we can use bonus depreciation to maximize the tax code in favor of them in the business. That's a more
Well,
favorable way to do it in my mind.
and let me say, like that, I choose not to deal with it, but that would be something, if I had to, I would be willing to deal with. I would do the research and all that. International stuff, no, but real estate professional, yes. It's not like that far out of left field that I wouldn't feel comfortable at least stepping up and doing some work for it.
Well, the cost
Um,
segregations, I think like Clifton Larson Allen, the Beach Feischman, they have subject matter experts who have done this for
mhm,
20 years who will come in, they'll perform the analysis, they'll tell you how to appropriately put it on the depreciation schedule, and then
mhm.
you submit their report with the tax return, and you meet all the requirements that the IRS hits or expects you to hit as a business owner. And then at that point, if they audit it, like you went through every step.
That is the ultimate cover your ass situation. Like that is perfect.
It's three to $10,000 from what I've seen locally here. It ranges depending on your locality, but if it's going to get you a $90,000 break in that tax year, and
It's
you're
worth
you're
it.
going to get totally worth it.
Scott, I have a bit of a problem.
You have to pee.
No.
I'm in the same boat.
So, you guys, we're going to take a minute or two, because I think Scott and I need to remedy this problem. So, we will be back soon.
Okay.
Whew. I'll wait for Scott to get back to talk about the beer I got. It's another good one, a little lower in ABV. I am going to read this comment because it's pretty important. The Y2A's problem, his bad European football team won the Serie A in Italy. Well, mine won the promotion to the Premier League because I really like bad European football teams, and mine ended up being good. Also, in the meantime, the only other super chat we got was from My Truth for $2. What's 2 plus 2? Whatever you want it to be, wink. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, that sometimes happens when you're doing a tax return, but it's not meant to be anything nefarious. It's more just like we have options on how to handle certain expenses, particularly fixed assets. So sometimes 2 plus 2 doesn't necessarily equal 4. It's nothing bad. It's just kind of the way things go. So yeah. But yeah, one of the cool things about having your own tax practice is that you truly don't really have to do much once you get through busy season, as long as you didn't have too many extensions and you're not doing things like bookkeeping, or you're not handling, conflict resolution. That's when you get a notice from the IRS. I used to do that earlier, when I had my business, just to have something to do. But, I actually don't mind not doing anything. I get up, I'll go to the gym, I'll sometimes go to a coffee shop and just chill with a book or my laptop. I have a tendency to stay up late and sleep in. You can hang out with friends. So Scott, I thought first I'm going to tell you, first we'll share our beers, so we can keep people informed. Did you get the same one or did you get a different one?
Same one, yeah.
Same one?
I wasn't fancy enough to go get a plethora.
No, that's okay. I mean, I got a fridge full of them at this point. So this one is from Maplewood. That's a local brew pub here in, it's a brewery, but it's also it's a restaurant here in Chicago. And this one's called the Crushinator. It's a session IPA. So this one's actually only about 5%, but that's fine. I had a heavy one first. Kind of wish I could taste the one you had. That sounded and looked good.
It was pretty tasty, man. It was smooth. Yeah, it's pretty good. I was surprised.
So Scott, let's make this a little bit more light, I think. I know you were saying that it kind of took you a while to just chill out, because when your body is, when you just work, stress, cortisol and all that, it can take a little bit of time for your body to cool down. Like, what have you been doing to relax? Like,
I love to run like you and Cappy do. So like we have beautiful trails like right out. I can see Sabino Canyon. There's Reddington. Like as I'm pointing, it's like directly I'm looking out my window right now. Reddington. You have Douglas Trail. You have the other national forest over here with Tinkerverde Ridge. So it's called Saguaro East. Yeah. So you have all these beautiful trails. I love going out there. It's like probably the one place in the world where it's just like, boom, just go get a 1,200-foot climb and just see everything and get away from people. No one's ever out there. If you're used to the heat, I don't mind it. So I'll get out there between 10 and noon and no one's out there.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this, because when I was out in Reno and Vegas with Clary, like, yeah, it was hot. It was like in the 90s, but there was no humidity. So it actually did not feel like it was that hot. Is it like that there?
Absolutely, yeah. And if you get humidity, you're going to have rain shortly thereafter, so you'll cool off.
Man. So do you like to hike too, or is it more just like running?
So depending on where you're at, it'll be a run hike, how steep you get.
Some trail running and stuff.
Yeah. It's a good, like some of the trails, they'll start out where your first mile is just straight up 40% grade. So you're doing, you'll run your first mile or half mile, and then you'll start power hiking. And once your legs come back around and the lactic acid breaks up, you're like, okay, I can run again. And then, it's good. It's good, man. Cool. It's peaceful. It's remote, nothing out there. Maybe I'll have a heart attack doing it one day and no one will find me, but I'd rather do that than not do it.
You're doing it the right way, because I mean, what I always found, like when your body is just put through that, and I think now you absolutely get what busy season is like. For me, it was being outside. that helped so much. It was either the vitamin D or the fresh air, like just being outside, which is why that trip west was freaking awesome with Atham and Clary. Yeah.
I think the one thing I learned this year was, your fire isn't mine. 2, before I touch a return this next year, I'm hitting the gym, I'm going to the trails, I'm dropping the kids off at school. I'm going to make sure that I put, I guess, the physical part, which will lead to the like not burning out and the mental health.
They're connected.
Yeah. I was at a point where I was like, do I want to just sell this fucking thing and go back to a 9-to-5?
It got that bad. It was that like strenuous. Yeah.
Well,
I used to feel that way.
The Silicon Valley Bank thing did it, man. That really put me over the edge. Like, it was one thing to deal with jerks and weird people and people who aren't organized, but for me, it was just like that payroll issue just added. It was almost too much. But I came out of it. I'm back. I'm grinding again. A couple of the new clients kind of brought me out of the funk just because they're cool people, and I was like, this is why we do it. This is why we're practitioners. It's cool. But I feel it's one of the most rewarding things when you see that you can help someone plan their life and properly file. And,
right. I do that with my cam girls and strippers. It's really rewarding. But Scott, in all seriousness, like in your defense, there's no way you could have predicted that, SVP Silicon Valley Bank thing.
Yeah. I like the retainers for the payroll though. I mean, they help float the business in the slow season, and it's another couple grand a month.
So that was me when I was first kind of getting started. But I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a slacker, but man, like I just, I feel like I earned my money for the year through April, and there are more returns to do. You're always going to have extenders, but it's just like, this may even be unhealthy, I fully admit. But, once busy season is done from May onward, I kind of just feel like, fuck it. I've done what I need to do.
Yeah.
I don't have kids to support, so full disclosure.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think that would be a little bit different. I also have some very particular people that want everything under one umbrella.
You're frankly,
it's
Scott's
weird.
Doing it the right way. Yeah.
I can't like say, hey, I'm going to outsource your bookkeeping over here. I'll do your taxes, and then your payroll's going through ADP. They'd fire me and go find someone who's going to keep it in one point of contact. So.
See, I'm a little bit different. Like if somebody insists on using a bookkeeper, they're going to use one of my bookkeepers. And if somebody if somebody needs payroll, they're happy to let ADP do it. So I'm sort of just like, honestly, Scott, sometimes I feel like I lack ambition a little bit because I'm just like so happy to just do taxes. I don't really want to do anything else,
Yeah. I'd like to get big enough if I could double the business from here and start. I'd like to
hire.
Well, I'd register through the VA and try to get some not the VA, I think it's the DOD, where they have these internships for people who are 6 months away from getting out of the military.
Yeah.
So that'd be kind of cool. Give them a paid internship, see if they like it or not. But so there's a lot of risk there too.
For those that don't know, Scott was in the military, so it'd be perfect to do that. Yeah,
it'd be really cool. To get that OJT. And really, I mean, if you could understand and take like accounting 101, 102, get some real life experience, I mean,
yes,
that would, I don't know, if someone learned under someone like yourself or Nick or Steve and could avoid the 4-year $35,000, the masters, that's another $25,000 to $35,000, and be able to get the EA and then just kind of segue into the tax practice. I mean, that'd be awesome.
Scott, this is what I've been preaching, the whole time I've had this channel. You don't have to go to a 4-year school. And of course, to sit for the CPA, it's like 5 years now to get 150 credits. You guys, you don't have to do this. You can learn this without having to put yourselves through that. Now, I think it's good to take an intro accounting course just so you understand, debits and credits and all that. But I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not.
But the debits and credits, you can understand it, but until you get that context live within a real GL instead of a word problem,
Yes.
I think I think the masters and the undergrad still are very, even though they use Gleam or Gleam, how do you say it?
Yeah, I think it's Gleam, but I mean that's
Gleam.
Gleam is Gleam that used
They
to be
used it.
yeah.
They used it in my masters, and then they used what's the other one? There was some other like automated to try to make the journal entries real and all that stuff when you're learning debits and credits and bond amortization and
I'm
all
only
this other.
familiar with Becker, like it was Becker.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's probably depends on what school you're going to and what they're pushing and the affiliate company, because there's so many now. But to really get that hands on, like a debit and a credit and accrued liability, what do you do if the accounting software doesn't reverse? Because QBO, there used to be like QuickBooks used to have a reversing entry button.
Yes, they did. Yep.
QBO doesn't have that now. Patriot Accounting doesn't have that. Unless you're using a higher end accounting software, you can't check like a Lawson, you can't check reverse. And when you upload the journal entry, or if you manually key it in the software itself, have it automatically reverse. So there's like different nuances where I still think the undergrad and the master's sells the people short. You still need that OJT. You still need to be in there working within the GL systems and understand the industry that you're in.
Yeah. I just think that I think Scott, tell me if you disagree with this. Like, I think some people are a little bit intimidated kind of by what we do. And like, one of the reasons I like this channel I have is because I want to tell people, like, really, it's not, you just have to get some experience, take a course or two, and get some real time, someone to show you how to do it, whether it's a return or bookkeeping. And both of us, I mean, you pretty much self-taught. I kind of did too. Now, my dad is a CPA, so he helped me with it. But I mean, you can self-teach this stuff essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. You totally could. Totally could. And then it's really just understanding the difference between, the book conversion to tax conversion, keeping your working papers, crosswalk. Like if you use Drake Accounting and Drake tax software, it'll crosswalk your book GL to your tax GL. I had Crosslink and Drake this last year because I had one large return that's like I charged $3,000 for, just because it's a pain in the butt. And so 50% of that fee goes to paying for the software, because when I took it over from the prior CPA, he handed me the Drake file, and I was like, there's no way in hell I'm taking this depreciation schedule and keying it back.
Oh, it must have been that long or something.
It's still ridiculous.
What type of business was it? Can you share?
Or? Foster homes.
Oh,
yeah.
I think you did. I think it was good you did that.
Yeah. So 4 foster homes. And it's really funky because the state's always behind paying them. And so the owner, being generous and affluent, having the resources to help fund, is constantly pulling money out in his own home to fund the business, and then paying off the line of credit, and then funding it again and paying off the line of credit. And it's just this back and forth. But because it's a legacy business from his father, and he's doing a great thing.
It's a noble pursuit. Was he pleasant to deal with and everything, or was he?
I love him to death. Yeah, his family is amazing. There's some secondary and tertiary business prospects that we're working currently, that I've signed NDAs and can't bring up right now.
Sure.
Because locally, if this ever got out, it's gonna put some competition on the floor for some other avenues.
Gotcha.
So yeah, but
I don't know if you can tell me this. Are they local at least to where you live? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So no, I mean, money will do 2 things. It'll make you a bigger asshole, or make you much more generous. And he's just one of the big, like he paid for his kids' schools, Future Farmers of America, FFA.
Yeah.
He bought like 4 or 5 cows and pigs. He's like, hey, is this a tax deduction? And so I was like, that's a good fucking question. But it was, and there's like a whole guideline. And so I basically reference the guideline in a share file. And so when we come to tax season, I have the receipt and the revenue procedure to kind of follow during the depreciation and donation side of it.
I did do my first Schedule F this past season. That's if you're a farmer, and that was a
Yeah,
bit of
yeah,
a learning experience. I'd never done one of those before, but you do depreciate animals.
yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, you run into all sorts of stuff. So anyone who's on here, how did Nick and Steve get into the business? Are you friends with him? Like, how does?
We've exchanged a few
Yeah.
emails, yeah, and so he's not working in the field yet, and I believe, yeah, he got his EA. What should Nick and Steve do now that he's got the EA? You know, like what should he target
How
experience, which is what I'm thinking.
how much? I don't know. I mean, has he ever worked accounting positions? Because if he has context to like what to do at that point, it's just a matter of IRS.gov is going to be your biggest friend, looking up revenue procedures and rules and
statutes and
regulations.
everything?
Yeah, I use Fast Forward Academy and Drake CPE. For Drake CPE is cool. It's more expensive, but they have videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm lame like that. I'm an auditory learner.
No, that's not lame at all, man. I got to do the CPEs too, and it's like I
Yeah,
need stimulation when I'm doing this. I'm not just going to sit here and learn about, alternate views of depreciation and
right.
God.
Yeah. So I mean, Drake CPE is really good, and that's what you're going to reference a lot of times when you're most of. I guess one thing to keep in mind is that on the back end of any tax software, they have a tax analysis team.
They do. Yep.
They engage all 50 states. They engage the federal government to bring in the rules, to build out the forms. All of that work happens year round, which is why when you like in Crosslink, I'll hit transmit. It'll push 15 updates from Alabama, Mississippi, California. And that's just like, hey, we caught something in the sheet, or California's pushing this change. And so they then update the sheet on the fly throughout the tax year, through the off season. And then what is it? November 16th when they kill the live.
Can't go in after that. Yep.
Yeah.
Same with
and
mine.
That's when everyone starts updating. That's when the tax authorities and the send everything out to and engage with these tax analysis teams and make sure everything is up and running correctly.
So Scott, like let's say that his EA study and he got the EA, he passed it. Like say that's all you've got. Now this is what I've been saying because it sort of felt like the path of least resistance. I'm like, you can either try to find a local CPA shop that's willing to bring you on board and train you, or H&R, because they'll frankly take anybody. And what would you do if you've got the EA but you don't have any experience? And this is going to help me because I want to know what to tell people, if there's something better than H&R.
So I ran the W-2 job at Banner Health while I started this. And so my first clients were people I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
I had enough credibility at my job that they trusted me with their information. So I made sure that I did enough research to meet, record keeping requirements. I got the EA, discovered I needed a certain amount of insurance, paid for all of that out of my normal paycheck. So I ran the two-prong approach.
That's what Clary preaches, the two-prong approach, which means you're continuing to get paid at your, day job, and then you start something on the side. Scott, guess how I got my first clients?
Dad? I remember, I thought it was the strippers.
No, well, you're close. It was actually one of my favorite bars. It was still my favorite bar here. I just used to drink with a bunch of people, and the bartenders and the servers were like, "Do you want to do my taxes?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So I got them by drinking with people. But that's not a typical approach. I don't know if I would recommend that.
But let me tell you, if let's just say I'm 20 years old, I'm at home, I passed this test just because I'm shit hot, but I haven't gone to school and I haven't worked a corporate job, anything like that. How are you going to get placement and access to clientele? You have to put yourself out there. You can't sit at home and expect people. Even if you have a kick-ass website, like what do they call it, the SEO? That's not going to work. Like you're fighting 45 other companies that have been doing it for 25 years. And unless you're on Google Maps with a standalone address, you're screwed. That's what I found out.
No, you're right.
Mine's been word of mouth. 100%. Like you can look up a price tax. I'm not going to show up on the Google search because I don't have a standalone
There
office.
is nothing better than word of mouth marketing. Nothing better.
So Nick is Steve. There's someone else on here. Is Parker on here? I thought there was like 2 or 3 people on here that were doing.
Parker had to leave. I don't know if I'm just checking to see if there's anybody else. But honestly, marketing, like word of mouth marketing. If you guys want to know a quick cheat code, Scott, I don't know. Scott, do you have a Yelp page?
I don't. I'm horrible with social networking, man. I'm learning this stuff now.
Oh, it ain't even social networking. Like one of the ways, and I learned this unintentionally. This was back in 2017. I did start a Yelp page, and I didn't bribe. I didn't do anything. I just asked, if I did a good job, would you please give me a good Yelp review? And like a bunch of people did that. That actually takes you to the top of the SEO. Now, I don't like Yelp because they try to get you to pay for it and they harass you over the phone. And the app is always giving you pop-ups like, pay us and we'll put you at the top. But to give them some credit, if you get some, and Google reviews too, if you get Yelp or Google reviews, 5 stars, it will take you kind of the top of SEO. I don't think you need that right now because your word of mouth is so good. And so is mine. Like the therapists that I work with, they sing the praises. So you don't need to do this. But for somebody just starting out, that's a way to kind of get yourself up there.
So when you get your EA, Nick is Steve, and you pass these tests and you have your insurance, you're ready to rock and roll. You pick out a software. You decide to either do pay per return or you just pay for the year in full. The year in full to me makes more sense.
Yeah, you got to do, in my opinion, you got to do year in full because you don't want to have that, I'm getting more business, but the stress of like, I got to pay for this return. Pay the full year.
All right. If my first year I did B2B walks, business to business.
So I kind of did that too when I started.
I got a few clients out of it. And at the end of the day, you still, like one of the bar owners said, no, I love my account and been with him 15 years. Cool. I shook his hand and he was an acquaintance because he knows the owner of Jeff's Pub, who knows so-and-so. And so it's, even though they say no, it doesn't mean they're not going to like you. And it doesn't mean they're not going to refer you.
Exactly.
So I would say, like, if you can get placement and access to points of contact who are networked, just because they say no doesn't mean they're not going to refer you.
If it's sort of like, this is probably an imperfect analogy here. And Scott, you're a married man. Like, if you ask a girl out and she says no, if you're not like a real dick about it, and you even stay kind of friendly with her, she'll I was going to say refer, like she'll introduce you maybe to her friends, I mean, that's not my situation now, but like, as long as you're just cool, just be a cool guy. And sometimes I worry about that with accountants because we have a bit of a reputation to be kind of like awkward and spurgy a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you can avoid that, it's going to take you a long way, I think.
Right. I think the big one too is just you gotta know your stuff.
Yeah.
Be presentable. Don't wear a t-shirt.
Especially a Chargers t-shirt.
Yeah, no kidding. It's an old one too, San Diego.
Dude, I prefer that. They should not be in LA. Fuck that shit.
No, not at all. I grew up in San Diego. It broke my heart, man.
I had no stake in it, and it broke my heart. Like, enough of this LA bullshit. Yeah.
And so, be presentable. And then like know your shit, but you don't want to waste your time, but you also don't want to be disrespectful. Keep the window open. Say, okay, great, wonderful. Hey, I'm local. I'm new. I got my office over here. If you know anybody, please refer me. And if you ever need any help, I'm always here.
What do you think of this one, Scott? What do you think of this?
Yeah.
This could be a little controversial, but I actually did this and it kind of worked. Be willing to answer the occasional question or two for free, as long as it doesn't take too long. You can spare 5 minutes, maybe 10, to be cool. Yeah. Once or twice. At least for me, that paid dividends because I wasn't like, oh, you have to pay me for this. I was like, oh, sure. Here's what I would recommend. For me, that actually came back to me in droves in terms of referrals and just good feelings. So don't get taken advantage of, but there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I've done that numerous times. I'll answer any question for free. It's just that, I mean, no question that I've ever had has taken more than 2 to 5 minutes.
Right. If it's something you have to research, at that point, you can't answer it because that's engaging with somebody who's not your client.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when I get calls, they're like, so and so wanted $300 to sit down with me. I'm like, when do you want to meet? Let's go have coffee. And
That's wrong.
it's a guaranteed. It's a, as long as it's not a messed up situation, or it's going to be a clean engagement. It's almost like dating, like you're saying. You're filling them out, they're filling you out. It's got to be a good scenario. Like I met with a PhD scientist at the University of Arizona. Him and his husband. It might sound weird.
No, that's common here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Same here. Super affluent, but they kept getting the runaround. They got ghosted by their CPA. They kept getting these $150 to $300 sit downs, and I was like, I'll just come to your work. Let's have some coffee, because I used to work over there. It's right next to the hospital I used to work with, so I got to say hi to friends. I was like, dude, let's hang out.
It costs you nothing. It costs you nothing to do that.
No, yeah. And I saved him 18. He's getting $18,000 back. It was one of the 2553s I had to fix.
You guys, I feel like you can tell, at least in my opinion, you know, I could always tell when I felt like somebody was trying to really take advantage of me. They're trying to get shit for free. Most people aren't. Most people are like, can you help me out with this one thing that takes a few minutes? I'm telling you, that like really pays off. It's almost a secret to life. Like, do a few favors, and people will really do stuff for you.
That worked out with the broker dealer too. There was a lady who went through a divorce. Talking about that engagement earlier, where it's like, hey, are we going to merge?
Yeah.
It was the other owner's friend who they met in Singapore years ago, got a referral to me. She's in California, so I do her returns now every year. And it was just like, she was going through a shit show of a situation. I spent an hour with her on the phone, and like now it's not just tax returns, it's a UTMA account for her daughter that she's contributing to. It's going to be her investments. It's going to be like, now we're both roughly the same age, right? She's 43, I'm 40. We're going to be retiring at the same time. And I'm hoping, I'm able to, help her grow her financial health. She's debt free now. And then also take her to the end of, that retirement window where we're both like, hey, I'm hanging it up. Go find a new CPA for your Social Security and your 1099Rs. I don't care anymore. But that's the kind of client I want. I want someone I'm going to hang with for 20 years. I don't want this 5 and done, 4 or 5 years and then done. Because it just, to me, it feels like a waste.
Turnover is not great. Like, you want to keep people around for a long time, because at the end of the day, it's a people business, like, even when you're fully virtual, there's still human beings that you're working with. So
yep.
I just think people need to develop skills in terms of knowing how to sort of navigate this, because I mean, one of the things Clara used to worry about, regarding me, was that I was letting people take advantage of my time, for free. But I would say this back to him. I'd be like, not only do I have the time because it's not busy season, but I also actually enjoy doing it. I don't mind going to the coffee shop or the bar down the street and talking about a few things. If people can come across as normal and engaging and be generous with answering questions and things like that, like I was saying, it's almost like the secret to life, like the secret to business success. And that's what I found.
So Daniel and Roddick, so that was a referral. So I can't even remember how I met Melissa Beard. So I met her. She's a real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
That's another story for another time.
Real estate professional?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting because she's disabled, but does it enough on the side to make some extra money, enough where it doesn't hurt her Social Security. But here's the thing. She's a C Corp.
A C Corp?
She pays a 21% tax and never takes anything from the business.
Oh, so she for those of you that don't know, one of the things with C corps is that they're subject to double taxation. So you're taxed on a corporate level, which is 21%. If you take dividends, meaning kind of distributions from the corporation, you have to pay for those as well. But sounds like she's doing it the way you should do it if you're a C corp.
She doesn't take any. She doesn't. Her bank account's slowly going up,
and up.
Is
that why she became a C corp, or? Yeah. I don't do, and I've done them before, but I actually don't do any C corp returns now. There's nothing wrong with them. It just doesn't fit into my niche.
No, I hear you there, but it's kind of her way around not getting hit with the extra income because she is kind of.
She take a salary at all from it, or she doesn't have to.
Yeah, so there's that, and then I did an extension for one of her friends who told Roddick, who's the husband of Daniel, great people, dude. They are probably the most on time, most efficient, most organized two people I've probably dealt with. It was the craziest thing for not having their spreadsheet was meticulous. I was able to take it and just rock the P&L. Do the balance sheet. They had all their end of year balance. I was like, this is impeccable. Like, who wouldn't want this client?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, which I understand this can be challenging for people in certain professions. It's a people-oriented business. Just be a cool guy or gal. Talk to people. Don't be afraid to be a little bit generous with your time. I really believe that.
Yeah. So I did. So Melissa referred her friend. I did her friend a favor, filed the extension because she didn't know how to do the free one that was on irs.gov. I was like, all right, whatever, I'll just do it for you. And then that turned into this referral.
What did that cost you? A few minutes? Like 5 minutes?
5 minutes. I sent her tax pass. She filled out her biographical information. She did it all for me. It interfaces into the software. And then at that point, I add the extension and push it.
Did you hear that, you guys? It cost Scott only a few minutes, and he may have just earned himself a guaranteed lifetime client with lucrative. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
So
it's don't nickel and dime. I hate how some of these people, like, I charge a flat fee typically. If it's a big pain in the butt, unorganized, it'll be higher.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say, oh, it was an 1120 and a schedule A and a schedule this and a schedule that, and it's $25 and $50 and $75.
There's no need to do that.
No. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. And then when you get these recurring, these returns turn into like 40 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They're fast because it just pulls the information forward. You plug in the New Year's stuff, go through your audit checklist, and you're done.
Let me tell you what I did the other day, and I'd be interested in your critique on this. And I'm going to read some super chats. I know it's been a little bit while. So Scott, I was kind of not bored, but I felt I hadn't done anything professionally productive, in a few weeks. So I was starting to feel a little bit bad about that. And somebody found my website. It's a young gal, probably like 23, 24. It was her first job out of, college, and she needed her returns done because either her grandmother or somebody died. And so she was getting benefits, from a trust or an estate or whatever. And other than that, it was like one W-2. So she emailed me. Now I've got my minimums, it's when you're established and you are established, when we're established like we are, you do have your minimum flat fees, and it usually goes higher than that. She emails me and she's like, I've got this, this, and this. Can you just do it for me real quick? And I wrote her back, and she wanted a quote. And I said, and she had put, I only need it done this one time. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything. And I even just flat out told her my minimum is normally this, but your situation sounds really, frankly, straightforward. And so I gave her a quote that was below my minimum, did it for her. It took me less than an hour. Gave it, submitted it. She paid me. That was it. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking off one-off projects. What's the downside? Somebody needs help. You state your boundaries. You state your terms and conditions. That's it.
So I have another scenario like this where did you do any of the ERC stuff?
Dude, that is a whole other can of worms. Employee retention credit, which is COVID related. So many scams were. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was pushing them to a larger, well-renowned company.
Yeah.
Squaring people away. Half these businesses didn't know it even existed.
Right.
They're so grateful for it. So then I have another guy who's paid me, like his engagement's about $10,000 a year because he's got multiple filings plus his individual. He's got 6 businesses now. This next year
6?
4. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's in the healthcare field as well, but he's like, dude, I really need to get this EIDL off my back. This ERC is, I was like, I normally don't do them, but for you, I'll do them.
Sure.
I know you're getting charged 20% over there. I'll do it for $3,000. So on a $519,000 ERC, that took 2 hours. I made $3,000.
Did you hear that, you guys? Because Scott was willing to be flexible, and he does have his preferences and boundaries, but he decided to give a little bit of his time. He earned $3,000.
I'm also not going to screw him over because he's been a loyal human being for.
Right.
So I'm like, it's a time sink. I'm doing you a favor. I'm saving you a god awful amount of money.
Right.
Like, I want a little bit. At the same time.
That's fair. You were being more than there's nothing shady. All of that is incredibly reasonable to me.
Yeah.
And when you guys are in your position and you've got your own firm and everything, you make the call. Is it worth your time? Do you want to spare a little bit of your resources just to help somebody out and make some money? It's almost like the easiest win-win I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, he's got 2 other companies, but they've been dissolved since then. So I'm not even sure if he could do the ERC. I haven't been able to find the answer on that. I don't think so, but
I have heard they're trying to crack down a lot on the CRC stuff, but I mean, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know if they have the resources for it, but
yeah, after getting my butt kicked this year, man, I'm at the point where, like, short of death, I think I've kind of gone through the gauntlet of, or having a heart attack at my desk. The wife walks in with me slumped over. I think this next year, man, I think we're going to be okay. I've got current business owners that are opening more businesses, people who bought real estate who are putting the stuff into an LLC and partnered with their spouse. And so there's more 1065 partnerships that are going to be filed with the 8825 on the real estate side.
I got to start winding this down a bit, Scott, but I have a good question for you, and we can spend a couple minutes on this. Like, what do you think you should do differently for next tax season? If anything, maybe you haven't thought about this yet, but is there anything that comes to mind? I'll shift my strategy. And it is a bit of an on-the-spot question, and I ask myself this every year after busy seasons.
I think even, oh man, it's a tough one because I had the other bullet point I had here was the oops, I forgot. Even though I send out checklists, I still had the oops, I forgot. And so there were amendments that came back.
Everybody forgets things.
The solar stuff, I forgot my daycare for the 2441. Just weird stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, come on, man. The other part too was that I was at like 40 individual returns after the business deadline. I was like, oh shit, everyone's going to go somewhere else.
No.
The end of March, they came all at the last second. And I was just like, no. I don't know how to deal with a lot of this stuff, dude. Like between decompressing, making sure you're not being a complete asshole to everyone around you because you're stressed out. The last second returns, like I'm still green when it comes to some of this, man.
Let me give you a little experiential advice. Scott, people leave stuff till the last minute. And why do they do that? Because they can. So if you're this is what I do. I tell a lot of people who don't have, corporations or partnerships, I'm like, look, I'm probably not going to get to it until after March 15th. And even then, I'll do the best I can, but that's just, you set boundaries. People are happy when they hear you say, I don't have to deal with stuff that stresses me out for a little while longer. I tell people this in January, They're happy about it. So the trick is to get all your business stuff taken care of, within that amount of time, beginning of February to March 15th. You'll do some 1040s in there, but not too many. And then leave the final month of tax season just for the 1040s. That's it. That's the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough though, man. I mean, you're kind of constantly learning your workflow, and you're constantly learning the industry as it changes, and
takes a little bit of experience. And I mean, I think from what at least it sounds to me like you handled this like a pro. The first tax season you had were really like piled on you. I don't know if I would have survived the Silicon Valley Bank thing, but
no, that payroll thing killed me because I had to convert everyone over to. I converted like 4 businesses that I really needed to take care of no matter what, over to QuickBooks and then SquarePay, because they use Square in their coffee shop.
I remember. Yep.
But it's really a nice integration because they can do their time cards in Square, and then just you put integrate or whatever, and the time flows through, and then you just enter the tips and process. So no, I think the big one, man, is just trying to deal with the stress. And then I was going to ask you, my buddy, he's a big strip club fan. He's like, dude, you should try to get all these strippers. I was like, that reminds me of Chad Elkins.
I love that. I'm happy I'm the strip club OnlyFans dude, and I do have some of them.
Like, how do you get them to be responsible and not put it up their nose or into their liver, or like the lifestyle type thing?
So I've said this. This is my answer, and I don't mean this. I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm just giving you the facts.
Yeah.
I mainly deal with their boyfriends/husbands. Yeah, that doesn't mean like the girls are busy working, but the guys are usually doing something else, and I'm kind of friends with them, so they're just kind of like, oh well, here's so and so's. This is what she made. Here's her expenses, and if I read you the expenses, you'd probably chuckle, but I'll save that for another show.
Yeah.
I just yesterday I was working on this, and I'm like, man, you spent far too much money on this particular expense, but. Yeah.
That's funny, man. That's hilarious.
But I mean, I'll tell you how I tried. This is what I try to do. Look, it's stressful. You can't get around it. When you have the type of like cyclical busy season like we have, there's just no way around it. It's going to be stressful. We talked about it real quick. Like you stay active every day, if it's only a walk you can handle, fine. I like to run. I try to alternate like lifting and running, even if it's just for half an hour, something. Be outside, get the heart rate going. It sounds a little bit cliche, but that's what's gotten me through it, year by year. And it feels really stressful sometimes. You're tired, you're just weak. Do it. Even if it's just 20, 30 minutes, just do it. A walk outside will get it done. Now, Scott, I will say, like, I have it, again, a little bit easier because I don't have a family. And, you got, like, family obligations and everything. I do understand that. But I get the impression your spouse is totally understanding about everything.
Definitely. Yeah, everyone's good. Yeah. Everyone's good with it. It's nice because I can take a break at, 2:15 and go get the kids from school.
We make our own schedules because we have our own practices. Oh, last question before I get the super chat. Like, were you? I'm more of a night owl. Like, I was incredibly productive, like in the evening hours, sometimes past midnight. Were you more of like a get up early and do work, or were you,
It's weird. Like, I was a night owl where I just continue grinding after the kids are in bed and all that stuff. But this year was weird, man. I was more early bird. I think I was more fatigued by the evening. I don't know. Maybe it's age catching up.
I'm a year older than you, so
yeah.
I trend late. I like to. Yeah.
I started waking up a little earlier, do 1 or 2 before the kids are up, then start getting them ready for school, and then running and coming back after I drop them off.
It's a balance, but honestly, man, like after working 9 to 5 in my 20s, I wouldn't have it any other way. I like setting my own schedule.
Absolutely. But there were points during the tax season too. I didn't really bring it up, but where it was like 2 or 3 days of kicking butt, and then you're waiting on someone else, and so you're just like, well, I got a couple days to kind of chill. I think it was just the accumulation of the oops, I forgot, the retarded people, and then the Silicon Valley Bank.
It can be a bit of a hurry up and wait situation sometimes. For me, the worst is when I was going to mention this earlier. I'm glad you like. For me, the worst is when somebody, for whatever reason, they're buying a house, they're refinancing. Sometimes it's student loans. I need this tax return done immediately. So maybe you don't charge extra, but you keep it in mind and you get it done.
Yep.
And then you don't hear from them about signature. Like it just sits there. For
Sarah,
me, that's the worst. I did fire a couple people over that like this year because it pissed me off so much.
So my software, when I send it out, you have 24 hours to touch that signature, or else it times out for security purposes.
That's a good way to do it. Keeps you on the ball.
And then I'm like, they haven't signed it. Fuck, I gotta send it again. So it's like I have to go back in the return, go to signatures, send to both the spouse and the main tax filer, and then send it back out. So they're like, oh, it's not working. I'm like, yeah, you waited more longer than 24 hours.
Listen, that's the shit that I don't tolerate anymore. And I'm not trying to be a dick, but poor prep. What's the expression? Poor preparation on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. So,
right.
Super chats.
Right.
I'm going to read this one. Then we got a good question. Scott, I may have you answer this one, but if you don't want to answer it, I'll answer it. But I'm going to start with this one here. Did you know, Mad 220 Canadian? What's your sign? I'm a Scorpio. We don't pay taxes. I'm a Cancer, which I always hated being a Cancer, but I'm a Cancer. What's your sign, Scott?
Taurus.
Taurus? I think I know when that is. Beginning of the year-ish.
April.
Yeah.
March, April. Yeah.
Perfect for a tax accountant.
Yeah.
This is I thought this was a good question, and I do have an opinion about it. I'll go ahead and read it. This is from John Griffith for $20. Great stuff, guys. Going through the EA testing now with an eye towards building a tax and accounting firm. I live in Ohio. Is it a good idea to form a Delaware C corporation, taxes an S corporation to yield the benefits of both? I want to get this right from the start. Thanks. I know how I would answer this. Do you have any opinion about it?
Ohio.
Okay, I'll just.
I don't know.
You can't. At least in Illinois, you can't do it this way because, it doesn't matter where you form a corporation. This state is obsessed with where did you earn your income? If you earned it all in this state, they're going to tax all of it. It doesn't matter what state your corporation.
I was going to say that the W-2 is going to ask you where you live, and then you're going to pay that residence state income tax.
Right. So John Griffith, I hate to say it, but if you formed, I'm not entirely familiar with Ohio, but from what I understand, at least in this state, and frankly, most of them, if you form a Delaware corporation, a C corporation, which is somehow what everybody thinks you should do. I don't know if it's a media thing. It's not going to help you because I believe the state of Ohio is going to be like, well, that's great that you formed a Delaware corporation, but we consider that a foreign corporation. You have to claim all income earned in our state, which would be Ohio. You have to put that all in the S Corp return. And that just adds an extra layer of headache for you because it involves another form or two to show the foreign income.
And so I'm a C Corp. And this year I took 40 in dividends. So I'll issue the 1099 to myself, and then I'll have another roughly 35 into W-2.
Do you pay yourself a salary?
Yeah.
That's a good way to handle the C Corp.
Because we had some renovations on the house, I took it as a dividend kick this year. So that's the double taxation versus the W-2, where I could payroll that 40 in there and run my C Corp down to 0 on the P&L. But I was like, I'll just pay the 21% because by the time her earnings come in, and then if I were to W-2 the whole thing, our effective tax rate is going to be higher, plus the FUTA, the SUTA, and all this other crap. So I'll pay the 21%. I don't give a shit.
This is our long-winded way of saying taxes is complicated, so you best know what
Yeah.
you're doing.
One way or the other, I mean, you're gonna pay. There's no avoidance. Like Instagram annoys me when they're like, "Oh, put it into a trust and then an S corp and then form 14 more S corps." It's like you're fucking retarded,
Dude. You know what email I got the other day? This almost made me punch a wall, and I'm not even stressed right now. Like one of the people I can say, I deal with therapists, right? And like one of the therapists, I consulted with her. I charged her an hourly fee for the consultation. I told her what to do to start her practice, paneling and all that. She sent me this link to a YouTube video that was like, "Hey, I heard that I can claim up to $5,000 of startup expenses without having spent it." And so it was an 8-minute long video, which was kind of annoying, but I went ahead and clicked on it because I'm not doing much. This woman did not fucking know. This person did not have a clue about what they were saying in this YouTube video. So frankly, I wrote back and said, "You can't claim deductions on expenses you didn't actually incur. This was a bit of a dick move on my part, but I included, stop believing everything that you hear on YouTube," which I actually, when I sent it, I was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that," because that's like, dick move.
No, it's all clickbait. So they'll take something that's a mile deep. They'll give you this much of it. So you click on it and it sounds awesome. I formed this LLC, and then you'll see like 14 other LLCs, and then this LLC, and I got all this protection because it's a trust and a holding company, and this and that. I'm like, you just created yourself $12,000 worth of tax returns.
That's what I'm saying. Like, people don't. It's so easy to get people to click on an article or how you can write off your dog. I'm like, Yahoo Finance is notorious for this. I'm like, stop with the clickbait bullshit. This is one of those headaches. It's a nuisance. It's a pest that I haven't figured out how to curtail, because every busy season these articles come out and I have to spend time responding to emails saying that person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I only have one company that it's a solar company.
Yeah.
It's a wind power. He gets grants. And then he does sales on top of that. So you have some grant income that's naturally offset by the expenses on the grant. And then 2, you have his income from the technology he's developing. Mm-hmm. So he did a Q sub filing where the assets sit in the parent S, but there's also an S that sits below it as a consolidated filing. But there's steps to actually trying to get that pushed and approved. And it doesn't make any sense unless you have high dollar assets that need to be protected from the operating company.
Well, why put those pesky, actually important details in that type of publication? So,
and it's complicated because it took me like 2 days to figure out whether it was going to make sense or not. Like, at what point would a good lawyer breach that corporate veil in a lawsuit and still make you liquidate those assets in the holding company? So you better make sure you're not commingling funds, because that's probably the first thing a lawyer would say. Oh, you're commingling funds.
Piercing the corporate veil. It's a real big no-no when it comes to this stuff.
And so that was sitting down with the owner of this QED wind power and saying, listen, if we file this and it gets approved, you need to keep everything as clean as possible. Because although you're sitting in a holding type company, you're still liable. Like, you get sued in the operations, they're going to make sure that corporate veil is legitimate. So if you're commingling and crossing expenses and spending money and doing when you shouldn't, then you're going to get screwed.
I've stopped even explaining that to people. I've got a tax attorney here that I'm kind of friends with, and he needs the business. I'm just like, talk to him, because I just can't bring myself to explain this to you.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Chase Robidoux for $4.99. I was almost fired when Intuit payroll went down and all my clients and their employees weren't paid. I didn't hear about this. I guess Intuit must have had some sort of problem. I'm not a fan of Intuit TurboTax. I even used to consult with them in 2016. I mean, I'm sorry that you were almost fired, but I'm glad they had problems, because I don't like them.
It's atrocious. I moved 2 of the companies there. They like it because of some of the, I don't know, the inventory integrations.
There's some I'll give Intuit this. They know how to integrate things, with QuickBooks and TurboTax and all that.
But the timekeeping's garbage. It's over-engineered. There's a bunch of widgets and like announcements that are all over it. It's just not a clean software.
Widgets. I love that term, widget. It's just so vague.
Yeah.
Ray John for $1.09 Canadian, which is probably $1 American. Who knows? Super sticker. I can't see it, Ray John. Actually, maybe I can. Nope, I didn't see the super sticker. Sorry, dude. Scott, this one's pretty interesting. $10 from John Griffith. Single guy with outside income looking for maximum tax advantage retirement savings. No double taxation, corporate ownership of auto residence if beneficial, don't need to take a salary. This is related to his last question about the Delaware C Corp.
How do you not need to take a salary? Is it so it is a C Corp for sure?
Let me scroll. I don't know. I better check on that. Did you say you already formed this? Let me see. I live in Ohio. Good. Oh, so he's asking if he should do this.
Why would you not want to take the salary unless you have the means to save 50 grand a year for the next 35 years, depending on your age? Your Social Security is going to be $350 when you're 63.
That's
so
what
taking a payroll for retirement planning is we live in the system. I have an opinion that it won't be there, but I'm also not going to take the risk and not pay payroll taxes and then not have $2,000 at the end of my life.
So he's
not paying into the system. So
he's saying he has savings and he doesn't need a salary.
So if you're going to alleviate your tax liability, you have the SEP IRA for just deferred comp, or you need to purchase assets. Like you're limited as far as like how you're going to wipe out.
You're still in the chat. I know you're still here because you just posted something. Can you tell us in the last 5 minutes here? Can you tell us what business this is? What do you do? Because I'm a little bit confused about corporate ownership of auto and residence if beneficial. I mean, the corporation can't own your residence unless you got a series of rentals.
For example, if a prize tax owned my home.
Yeah.
And I rented to a prize tax.
Well, I mean,
and it was on I would have to do real estate check a box for real estate activities within the corporation, do the 8825. If it's an S corporation, it's still going to pass back through to you. So it's circular in that case.
That's what I was thinking. Okay. So savings from sale of another business banked and not incorporated yet. But do you have a business?
So the sale of the other business should have already been taxed. And
yeah, that's what I was thinking. This is great. I'm happy we're kind of closing on this because this is okay.
Looking for ideal set of renewed.
So wait, you're starting an accounting firm, or you sold an accounting firm? Savings banked.
Sold another business and is now trying to set up a new tax and accounting firm for the reason above.
He lives in Ohio. Admittedly, I don't know a ton about Ohio.
I hate their tax returns. I have one.
Yeah, because they got those goddamn, local taxes, which are such a pain in the fucking ass. I had to fire somebody because I hated doing Ohio returns one time, but they were kind of a dick anyway. So
yeah, and you have to mail them in because they don't e-file certain.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
John, I don't really know. I mean, it's corp wise. I don't really. If you want to start a C corp, if you want to do it sort of the way that Scott is doing it, that's one thing, But in a
normal year, I payroll everything out of the business, so I take it to close to zero. So that 21%'s $350, or it's zero, or it's going to be a very minimal amount.
And you're saying, I understand that you don't need a salary and that you have savings, but it's actually kind of tax advantageous if you do take a salary. If you're going to do the C Corp thing. Like, I'm not a fan of payroll taxes, obviously. Scott, you and I are around the same age, and I hope Social Security is going to be around, when we're around. But at the end of the day, I'll just say it. To me, it makes no sense.
Overcomplicating.
Yeah.
On a partnership, if he had a business partner, he would have to pay self-employment tax on the K1. Yeah. On the S Corp, there's a reasonable salary requirement with a minimum of if you're going to keep your tax client safe, you're going to recommend 50-50 or 60-40 split between W-2 and distributions. Otherwise, IRS will end up. I mean, if I was IRS, I'd take every S corporation. If I didn't see an officer salary there or a small officer, I'd audit all of them. If I'm the IRS.
Frankly, I'm surprised they don't do the reasonable compensation audits more often, but they probably don't have the resources, because some of the shit that I've seen, people clearing $300K and paying a salary of $20,000. I mean, there's some people that have been getting away with that for years. Not my people, but just stuff I've seen.
So, John, remember that 1099 that I'm pulling the dividend out of that's not expensable. So I've got this phantom income that's sitting there because I took that money out of the company. So I'm going to owe money on that.
Yeah.
The 21, right? So it's not expense. So I've got a $30,000 net income that's going to get hit at 21%. But I did that so I can get these renovations completed.
Exactly. He did it. He was strategizing. So, I mean, it's one thing to minimize taxes, but there's also real life that, happens.
So real life happens. So I was like, I need the money. I'm going to pull it. I'll just eat shit on the 21% this year. Screw it. And it is what it is.
21% is not terrible.
No.
So
double taxation. There you go. Yeah.
So John, I just said, last thought, don't form the C Corp in Delaware. That's pointless, especially for what it sounds like you're doing.
Yeah, I have a friend who formed in Las Vegas because there's no state tax, but the K1 still comes back to California and aggregates in that state AGI. I'm like,
people make that mistake so many times.
Yeah. So,
Scott, we're at we're about at the 2 hour mark.
Yeah, this has been fun.
This is awesome, man. Thanks for suggesting we do this again. I didn't know if you were vacationing, or something. I was just like,
No, I'm trying to learn, man. Like, what are you doing to recover and all that stuff? And no, you had some good tips.
It's
in the chat and outside of the chat.
Well, this was your first one, and I remember what I was like, man. It actually took me more than probably like 2 or 3 months before I was just like,
yeah,
life is normal. We don't have to be stressed about everything. So you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts? Anything else you want to say before we close out? Or
yeah, for those who are about to get their EAs, just figure out how you're going to get placement access to clients. I like your idea of the bars.
Well, that worked out for me.
No, it definitely works. I mean, there's maybe the strip clubs, depending on the lifestyle of some of these people. And then really be picky with the firms you're going to go to, because you don't want some 300-pound Karen that's going to drive you crazy and you're going to quit right away. And then you went through all that testing for nothing because no one else is going to hire you after that. It just turns into a snowball. Yeah. So I would try to figure out how to do it on your own. I mean, we have gas stations out here called QT that are paying.
Clary is obsessed with QT because they serve that disgusting Rooster Booster Light. It's like this strawberry nasty energy drink. But if there's a QT, Clary needs to be there, apparently.
I guess my thought here is, if you could go get a job there making $22 an hour, running 3 registers, and make a decent living while you're getting this thing going, I would say it'd be better than working for a 400-pound Karen 70 hours a week at a firm that's going to run you into the ground, because they're going to burn you out.
I guess, don't let, whether it's a firm or, mom and pop, which I don't even know if these are still around, but, mom and pop, like accounting firms, they're probably dead by now. But, don't let anybody take advantage of you. But at the same time, don't be afraid to show a little bit of, gumption, generosity. It's just, you'll figure it out. And, Scott, it sounds to me like you handled your first major busy season doing this full time way better than I did, for what it's worth.
This one kicked my butt compared to the last 2. Of the 5 years doing this, it's really been, this is the 3rd year of really doing it full time, outside of having a W-2 job and trying to balance them both and get it to grow.
The real deal.
I got punched in the mouth, man. It didn't feel good.
But you know what, man? You're going to take that into next tax season. You're going to know what to do and what not to do. It might sound a little bit trite, but it's only going to get easier for you from here. because for me, that's what happened. Like each year I knew a little bit more and knew what to do. So you've gotten through the hard part and you're going to know what to do next.
I was going to ask you one more thing too.
Sure.
Do you think you and your dad could partner again and do one more Elkins tax review book with the transition out of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act?
So we haven't done that since 2019. My dad is 79 years old. He is so retired with this stuff. Like he's just like, like a lot of people his age and even younger with the boomers, like the COVID stuff was the final nail for a lot of these dudes things. They're just like, it's just too much crazy shit. So that's probably not in the cards, and he's enjoying life without having to worry about this type of shit. So
back in 18, that was a big one that I kind of followed and used to really get it pushing forward as far as a guideline to learn from.
Was it helpful?
Yeah, definitely, because nobody knew it.
There were so many interpretations of all this shit. So, that was the Wild West back then.
But I mean, it's good to have a nice reference, and that was a big one for me. So I guess as we transition out of that 2018 Tax Cut and Jobs Act,
it's going to sunset.
It would be cool to see someone like you put that book back out as like the sunset of TCGA or something,
Well, if I decide to stop being a lazy hedonistic, asshole after tax season ends, maybe I'll sack up a little bit.
Yeah. So, but that was cool little read.
Scott, I really appreciate it, dude. We will do this again. We'll do this again. It's fun.
So yeah, I'll have to get out there. My wife has some family up there in Illinois.
Oh yeah.
So go to a Cubs game or a Bulls game or something in memory of Clary's love and infatuation for sports ball.
Oh man, he and I got into it over that when we were out there.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Scott, hang around for a bit, but I'm gonna end the show now. You guys, I think it's gonna be next week when I bring Parker on, and this is going back to EA, got the certification, got some experience, so I think it'll be pretty valuable for some of you. But otherwise, we should hang out soon.